Sure.
Karen, your equipment on?
Yes, thank you.
You're all ready to go?
You're on.
Okay. Good morning, Happy New Year. I'd like to call a work session for the Selectmen to order for Friday, January 5th. Can we all stand and salute the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is Chief Shagoury. Happy New Year, sir.
Yeah.
And you're on appointment to talk about police facility study design warrant article.
Yes, so, by the way, we have money set aside, obviously, in a capital reserve, and as it got changed a couple of years ago, it says that you need approval of the town meeting to spend any money on it. And obviously, before we can go forward with much, we still have to have something to show people as far as a plan. So kind of like, we need something to get this primed, if you will, to say where we are and what we need. So I did reach out to a few chiefs. I spoke to Chief Rollins, they're doing design build, so it's kind of a different ball of wax, but I talked to the Raymond chief who's doing an addition or a new facility. And he said it was gonna be around 16,000 for what they were doing. And I talked to Andre Coates and he thought 2025 would, so I'd asked for 30 as a safe number to make sure we had enough to get what we needed for next year's, you know, progresses, move this ball down the field, if you will. Just, you know, because we now are kind of, what we have, it might be a little dated as far as cost estimates and size needs. So we, and realistically, we couldn't ask for anything beyond that without some sort of plan. So that's where,
So what would the $30,000 provide us with?
with an architect to do the study, to say this is the size and this is what it would look like. That's what it's for.
Okay.
Any of the testing that needs to be
And
done
the Andre person is who?
from Bowen. And he gave a ballpark number, so what it would cost. And not that I was going with any of these facility groups or anything, but it's just to give me an idea as to what to ask for as a warrant article. That's what that's about. We'll progress this further along.
So the language of that the money's being held in requires that the town release it every year?
If it's coming from the capital reserve, it requires a vote at town meeting, yes. I'm not sure how the warrant article is proposed, whether it's proposed to come from capital reserve, unfunded, undesignated fund balance, or from taxes, I'm not sure.
But there was money set aside
We've got,
There is a capital reserve fund for a
For-
new build.
for a new project, so we just need to word that to
So-
release the funds to do a design study.
And the recommendation that came out of CIP is not to pull it out of the capital reserve fund, but to budget money to do this work. in the
instead of
current year.
putting money towards the capital.
Instead of putting more money or an additional contribution in the capital reserve fund this year, that the town spend $30,000 to do
Which
the
is
design
less than
work.
we've been putting into the capital reserve.
So the capital reserve was initially set up to start building a fund to build the building.
That's correct, yes.
And how much money is in there now?
I don't recall.
It's gotta be close to 500,000, I think.
Fine.
It's for,
$35,000.
yeah, it's something, it's a lot between, it's right around 500,000, I think.
And you want to put a $30,000 warrant article out to pay for a design?
And whatever, if we have to do any kind, I know sometimes we did, like when we did the fire station, they did the geotechnical study too, go ahead of time to see what they were gonna need for a foundation. So we could have some kind of solid numbers to give for an estimate.
And then we'd need to locate it, I guess, if we're gonna give it to that extent.
Pick a location, yeah.
Right.
And that might also be part of the, looking at what location, I would hope that they would, come to some sort of,
Recommendation.
working with us, sort of recommendations to what it would cost here, what it would cost there, if you will, and, I mean, the two locations that are primary to what we already own would be, Dearborn property across from the library, or, next to the fire station on that large lot there. Those are the two that we already own and would have space to do it, but other options may be, out there that people consider, but those are two obviously that we already own and have been discussed in the past.
Do you have anything in writing you can submit?
I can submit basically what I just told you, that I got these sorts of estimates.
Well, you could also submit the copy of the last police station report, right?
Yeah, I could do that.
And that offered 3 suggestions, right?
That offered 3 suggestions: a standalone building, add on to the library, which seems to be the library's adding on there, so that's
Yeah.
kind of off the table. So we're actually down to 2 suggestions if that happens: standalone building or add on here.
And if I remember correctly, I didn't bring my folder with me, but that committee did a basic design that could be used in either option, right? So that's a beginning spot.
It's a beginning spot. It was very basic.
It was a conceptual
It's
or
conceptual.
a rendering.
Yeah. Not enough though that I don't think you could take it to town meeting and say, this is what it's gonna cost.
I do agree with you there.
And this is what it really needs to look like. There needs to be more work done on it. It was done kind of as a favor at no cost by someone who did some work for us in the
Yes.
past, an architect. But it was not,
Well, it's the cost of doing business when you're architects. I mean, I think that's something that's gotten lost here in Tuftonboro. I mean, I'd be willing to say, we'll put a $30,000 warrant article up, premised on at least 5 architectural bids with schematics, and then awarding that to whoever we decide to award it to.
no, I
want
expect
these-
it would go out to bid and,
Yeah, I want these people to do some work. I don't want to just cut a check for 30 grand to somebody that we know, which seems to be the way we operate around here. So if we're gonna put it out to bid and get a number of architectural designs that we can look at and then award it, I'm fine with that process, but I'm not interested currently in putting $30,000 up on the table and then having some people come in and say, yeah, well, for 30,000 we'll give you this. That's not telling me anything. I want them to show me what it is their plan is. And then if we award them the building, then we start paying them. And if that system doesn't work in this environment, then we'll address it next year. But that's the way I personally would like to approach this issue. And I'm only one selectman, there's 2
when we went through
guys.
this before, I mean, we had an amount that we could pay to hire somebody before. He was in the, I think, as I recall. And what we did is we got requests for RFPs, and they showed their qualifications and that sort of thing. But I don't think they're gonna give they're probably, I was thinking they would repeat some of the work that we did with the needs assessment, if you will, to some degree. To have, I guess, my concern, yes, that would cost some money, but I also think it gives another outside look at it, if you will. Because when we came up with the square footage, it was 4,900 square feet. And I know some people in town are tossing around a lesser number of square feet. So I guess I'm thinking to give an objectivity have an outside kind of come up with a different, if they see what they see.
Well, it
Based
seems
on
to
their
me,
experience.
in any event, the first step in terms of moving toward a facility is you have to establish the need, okay? Doing a current needs assessment, we got something from several years ago, but I agree with you, having a third party that's objective, provide us with here's the amount of space that we ought to have in the facility to meet all the needs, including future needs here in the town.
So you're saying a two-part.
So the needs assessment is the
So
first
needs
piece,
assessment
right?
and then a,
Right, and then based on that, a design. And it makes sense to me that we would, from a needs assessment, solicit interest from more than one designer, architect, and based upon the input that we get from them, select somebody to do the design. Now, how much work they would do in terms of, my guess is you're not going to get an architectural rendering of, here's the building we'll design for you for X amount of dollars, but
they must have done it before, I guess, that's where I'm
Well-
coming from. So if they've got
But
four
that'd
police
be
departments.
part of the review, I would think, of who you select is what they show for their qualifications.
sure. Projects they've done in the past, and, again, I presume that most of these firms are familiar with a competitive bidding process to get work. And not that that's always the situation, but you're going to put a proposal together and come in and present it, and based upon the proposals, and not just, and the proposal includes all kinds of things, which is experience and as well. And then move forward from there.
So is the current needs assessment that we have, can we update that? Is that recent enough to update, or do we have to go right back to square one?
I would suspect it can be just updated, but I would like someone to kind of look at it and maybe validate it, if you will. I don't know that they need to start from square one per se, but I would.
So who would do that? What would be your notion of who that would be? Are there companies that do that?
The architects
alone?
typically do that, they'll do a need assessment.
I mean, I just don't want to have somebody get his foot in the door and all of a sudden we gotta buy that. That's the problem I
see
see
what
with
you're
this
saying.
system.
Well, I guess you could have two stages of it, I guess. You could have a needs assessment, and then you could have a separate for design.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I think that's exactly what Bill had mentioned. I mean,
Yeah.
if we don't know what the needs are, we don't know what the square footage requirements
So
are.
it'd be
Well,
like two
regardless,
stages.
we think we know what the needs are, and we've established in the past, these are the needs. But having somebody that's independent from us
Verify that.
provide us with a needs assessment, adjusts our thinking, or validates our thinking, or says, you guys are all wet, and this is what you need over here. But the whole idea, in my mind, of having somebody that's independent, that is involved in this world, that brings something to the table that we don't, in terms of,
Maybe recent experience with their own
Right.
projects.
Yeah, and there's where being the chief and being in the position that you're in, that you could get some information from other police
Right,
departments.
that's,
about
I
it.
did talk to Raymond, like I said, was doing something, and Durham's doing something, but they're doing design build add-on with Bowen, I believe is who's doing that. So, obviously, and I know Rollinsford's going through a process, they're doing design build, they're looking at a variety of different things, kind of interesting. They don't have, yeah, it's kind of a little interesting process going on there. It's a little different than what I've seen some other places do, but they're working through it, and
Mhm.
you know,
I'd be glad to weigh in here. First of all, and I'm just going to speak common sense, there's not a person in this room that doesn't know that we've needed a police station for some time. And you've been very kind not to jump in front of other projects. Okay? There is a report out, the Bob Tev committee, and it did an excellent job. That report was well received. In there, it kind of talked about a location. I think common sense says the location is on the property we already own, that's within sight of where kids are, the library, the playground, and the school. And other than someone who hates the police, really can't disagree with that, can they?
Probably not.
Okay? The land across the street has already been geo-tested.
And it's been surveyed, if
So-
I recall,
so,
by
yep.
Bertrand.
And there were test pits, and so we know. So common sense to me says, boy, I'm kind of leaning toward that location so far. Follow where I'm coming from? The next thing is that the rendering that you worked with on that committee, I think is very functional. I've showed it to other police chiefs, and they say, yeah, you did a good job allowing these people to really tour part of the state, and they came back. And the idea was that whether it was to remodel the existing building over there or plant the new building, we already have a rendering that I'm going to say is 99% there. Now, an architect might say, well, you have a bathroom that's not handicap accessible, or your door isn't wide enough. These are technical adjustments, correct?
Mhm.
So we're already, other than putting the dollars up, we're already 90% there, aren't we?
Probably a
Okay.
good bit of the way there.
Right.
I just think that
I
perhaps validating
Yeah.
that from an outside source would be
Right.
valuable.
agree with you there. Have you folks read the report?
Yes.
Have you read the report? It seems to be, from a layman's common sense point of view, pretty well laid out. That's my opinion. The other thing, as far as coming up with the dollars, it makes no difference to me whether it's a warrant article or we put a warrant article to have it come out of the current funds that have been set aside. Not talking about the police station is, at what point do we slow the budget down a little bit? And that's a political consideration, I think of. I'm not saying we're throwing money. In my career, I can say moving this project along is an investment in our future. But I'm thinking of what people who come to me who want to support the project, but gee, boy, I'm worried about my taxes too. So I've spoken.
So you're thinking that there's enough work done so that if we put an RFP out for a design, that we could include in that RFP an updating of the needs?
Yes. And I think the $30,000 is a reasonable figure. I'll go along with the board of where you think the money should come from. It's tax dollars no matter what. Is it tax dollars that have already been saved, or is it tax dollars to be raised? And I have no problem with town meeting making that decision.
Well, over the past few years, we've set aside money for the police station.
Yes.
So it's not unheard of to do it again this year if we weren't in this
Yep.
discussion.
Well, the CIP has recommended two things. They've recommended putting money aside in capital reserve, and they've also recommended that this warrant article be outside the capital reserve. Am I correct on that?
Two warrant articles?
They, if I remember correctly, CIP did not recommend adding to the capital reserve this year.
Okay.
They recommended funding this design work in lieu of.
Okay, I stand corrected.
And of course, 30,000 is less than what we've been putting aside in the capital reserve over the last several years. My thought about taking it out of the capital reserve as opposed to taking it from current year's receipts is that the whole idea of putting this money aside is when we get to the point of building a facility, then we've got money set aside to do it. We're not setting any additional monies aside toward future construction this year. I think it's appropriate that we, in lieu of that, fund this design work.
Do you folks have enough information, or do you want to take a few days to think about it?
I mean, it's not really only our decision. I mean, I think it's a need that has to be addressed. 30 grand is gonna get you to the point where you've got a design and a cost estimate. You still have to come back to the voters in 2019 and ask for more money if you want to build the thing.
Correct.
Yep.
The design isn't gonna spoil, it's not like milk. So if we have to wait another year, or however we wanna do it, and accumulate more capital, then that's,
The only thing,
An option.
if you wait too long though, you now
you
may
have to
have
do
codes
the,
changes.
yeah, you
Right.
gotta do the needs again.
Well, I don't know, but the needs maybe, but I'm also thinking codes change in the interim,
Oh,
if they sit
right.
too long.
Right, Jack.
Yep.
So I'm not opposed to presenting that as a warrant article to the voters and then let them decide how they want to proceed.
Does the money come out of the?
No, I think it has to, I kind of agree with Bill that it should be just a separate warrant article and we'll leave the capital there for the building. I mean, I think that's the most reasonable thing. That's what you asked for originally, when you got that accumulated fund. So I say leave it alone.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we present a warrant article to the town to approve $30,000 for a design and needs assessment for a new police station.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0 for the record. Thank you, Chief. Happy New Year. Gentlemen, do we want to go with warrant articles next, or another appointment with the Budget Committee Chairman? I'm just thinking that, go ahead.
May I just ask a question for the, is it okay to ask how you want the wording for the police study? Do you want to decide
Yeah, I
that
think
now
I
as
have
well?
to-
We're gonna,
Do that later?
once we get everything done,
Yeah, okay.
I think we need to make sure that the wording is,
Clear.
Okay.
works with DRA.
Okay.
So, and in my opinion, at this point, the way you have it worded in here, preliminary is fine, just keep it in there.
Okay.
I think it's good wording.
Thank you.
Does the board have a problem with the appointment stepping up?
Uh,
Okay. Yeah? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Good morning, Carla.
Good morning. Well, gentlemen, I find myself in a bit of a pickle again. I know that Max is calling for me to publicly apologize that I'm wrong on adhering to Buckley's opinion. And if I don't, that I should resign, and I just want the Board of Selectmen to know that I'm not going to apologize for adhering to Mr. Buckley's opinion, and I'm not going to resign. But I also want to make perfectly clear that I know I'm not a policymaker. Board of Selectmen makes the decisions on these kinds of things. So the decision falls to the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Buckley last year in September, I'm sure you've read the email that he sent me, seemed pretty clear. And that's what I know the Board of Selectmen was going on. The Budget Committee didn't have any say in regards to if names were released or not. I still feel very strongly that they should not be released, that it's a violation of privacy. If I might suggest, the Board of Selectmen, if they have any questions, wouldn't cost you guys to reach out again to the Municipal Association for a second opinion if you feel you need to. But that's what I wanted to say in public. Do you have any questions for me? Do you have all the information you need?
Any comment?
Yeah, I think you refer to us as policymakers, and we do make policy, but
Well,
we're not gonna, we don't have the authority to show you the door, because you're an elected official.
well, but you could ask that I resign, and I
I suppose
would.
we could, but I think this is a lot about nothing.
I think it's a lot about nothing as well.
And having been married to a judge for as long as I have, and we receive all of the slip opinions on a daily basis
Mhm.
from the Supreme Court. I've been reading Supreme Court opinions since 1981. And I guess I would presume that I would have as good an ability to read those opinions and discern from them what they meant as anybody else in this room, and probably better than most of the people in this room. And from my position, I would think that we can make a policy or a decision whether or not to release this information. And if there is an aggrieved person out there, they're certainly welcome to take it to the Supreme Court and ask their opinion. My opinion of after having read the Supreme Court opinions that were cited, I'm not totally convinced that we're required to release that information. So,
Nor am I, and I read them carefully as well. And, well, every case is different, and the law is the law. You can read it, but that's why we have lawyers and judges, to interpret the law. And Mr. Buckley is a well-respected attorney with the Municipal Association, and he did clearly lay out that he felt it was a violation of employee privacy. And that was back on September 27th, 2016. It's not my decision, though. I feel as if I have landed with the target on my back because I happen to support his opinion, his legal opinion, but I haven't heard.
well, you don't get the information either.
No, I don't get the
So
information
the
either, and I
only
don't want the
people who-
information.
We're gonna decide who's gonna get the information.
Yeah, and I also want to make it perfectly clear that I have Gordon here too, I don't think that the Budget Committee has been at all impeded in our decision-making process because of the lack of the names. We have the numbers, that's what we look at. And I want to applaud the Board of Selectmen for reducing the amount of employee insurance costs. Do we have a ways to go? Probably, but that's something to continue to look at. But I just wanted it on the record that I don't plan on apologizing for supporting this opinion, and I don't plan on resigning. Okay?
Good.
Any comments?
Thank you, Carla, for your service and for standing up and having a target on your back, whether it's deserved or not. And I think we always need to be sensitive to private information of individuals. And yes, the public has a right to access governmental information.
And I fully support that.
But the AG, as we know, has specifically identified a number of items of personal information that it is our responsibility to protect when disclosing public records. And Attorney Buckley identified a number of them in his email to you. And to suggest that they are not protected is at odds with the AG's guidance, which I think we all rely on. And I guess I've said what I need to say.
I have a couple of comments.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for your service. I was on the budget committee for 17 years and chairman for 3 years, and I always appreciated that the selectmen said, you're duly elected. We might not always agree philosophically, but it is your budget. Please don't change that. That's a check and balance, and you are served by the people who elected you, and not just the selectmen or a select few. The second thing is, having been a former prosecutor, I'll tell you, I've always listened to Chip because he's knowledgeable, and he doesn't just talk about the letter of the law, he talks about the spirit of the law, and that's what those slip opinions are about. The next thing is, long before I was a selectman, long before I moved back to Tuftonboro, I worked in towns where I worked on these policies, both HIPAA and Right to Know and all that. And as recently as knowing the territory, page 11 and actually 111 and 112, it is very, very clear that the fact of whether an employee has an individual, two-person, or family plan could reveal information that could reasonably be considered confidential, embarrassing, or an invasion of privacy. And there needs to be an extra measure of caution, whether you call it HIPAA or public right to know or whatever. I'll stop there. The right to know law is very explicit, but there are 11 other places in our RSAs that aren't listed. For example, none of us in the public have a right to know what you take for a book out of the library. None of us in the public have a right to know whether you got a pistol permit or not. And there's 9 other instances like that. And the Dillon rule says that unless the law specifically says you can do it, you don't do it. And this is my training long before I was a selectman. There's another concept, and that is, it's called modest privacy. And this is an editorial comment on my part. If you notice, since I've been chairman, I technically can read the name of the landowner that owes, let's say, a tax because they didn't pay for their timber tax or whatever. What do? I give the lot number. So if someone wants to research it, yes, they can. But you know what? And this is editorial comment on my part. All of the citizens in Tuftonboro, we have more in common than what separates us. So, in closing, I want to personally thank you for your service. Please continue.
Great, thank you. And I do hope you'll do something about what's up on Max's website that you're...
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
About that. Free and open interweb.
Yes. Are we ready for warrant articles? Which ones do you want to begin with? Now, we've had some that we've already approved, right?
Yeah.
Do we just want to start with number 1 and go through them?
Well,
Number 1 was the article to raise and appropriate $35,000 to purchase a new vehicle for the code enforcement officer. Any issues with that one?
Do you have,
I don't have number 1. I have number 4. I am missing a page.
yeah.
do you have this one, Lloyd, that I broke down?
Okay.
Ones you approved? Just-
Okay. Show me the page.
In that little packet for today, there should be one that says today's meeting. and it says-
This one right here, correct?
Yeah, articles you approved, yeah,
Okay,
okay.
we'll go with that. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $43,000 to be added to the SCBA.
But these are all articles that we voted on in the past.
Okay, are we happy with the wording?
As it is, sure.
Okay.
Okay, I kind of brought it up because I know Chip had some comments sometimes about
Yes.
like these types of words. You want that comment?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess and I'm not editorializing, I'm actually stating a position. The full amount, 43,000, will come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount will be raised by taxes. I'm not comfortable with that language.
Okay.
I mean, I think we've already raised money and it's gone into the unassigned fund balance.
So let me
it
suggest that we
actually
just.
is taxes.
Let me just suggest that we strike the end of that sentence.
Thank you.
Okay, so we just end at unassigned fund balance
Mhm.
and strike the rest of that. Yes, no, I agree.
Okay, I don't know.
If you want the back half of the sentence, then the correct way to approach it would be to call it, no amount to be raised from new taxes. But I think we can just end at fund balance, period.
Right, and if we were gonna, I guess not to belabor it, but if we were gonna do it that way, we'd add up all the ones that we wanted to pay for out of the unassigned fund balance, and we'd have a warrant article that says, we're gonna take
Yes.
$200,000.
That's how, for example, Molten Borough does it.
Yeah.
They
So-
group them that way.
Yeah.
I mean, we did take some money out of the unassigned fund balance when we set the tax rate.
Yes.
And we'll probably do that again from
Yeah.
time to time.
Yep.
The next is Article 6.
Okay.
And the understanding there is that if the new library warrant article passes, this just
And
gets deleted, right?
And should we put language in Article 6 to that effect?
Why don't we ask DRA whether they think
Okay.
it should be
Yeah.
added, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Article 12. And we've already had a discussion that we don't want to go on a 5-year lease.
We just want to do the purchase.
And I'm not trying to bootstrap it either, so.
Okay.
To see, in Article 13, 20,000 for the entrance door.
Right.
Should we say replace the entrance door and related repairs? You know, what happens if they find a rotted sill or something like that? As long as it doesn't go over the 20,000? Or is that making it too complicated?
In my opinion, the wording in here is clear enough.
Okay.
We always have to raise and appropriate, and so there always has to be that wording in there, because there's two steps, but in terms of more specific wording on the project, I think that's appropriate for discussion when it's brought up at town meeting. Flush it out.
On 15, can we just, Adam's here, can you just walk me through again why, or what the difference is if we make the $123,000 payment and if we don't?
You mean make it earlier down payment?
Right, we're not getting the fire truck for a year, and yet we're gonna spend $123,000 this year for it.
He did give me, oh, he's right here. And he gave me some wait time.
Oh, I'll look at that. Thanks.
So in advance, the 5 payments would be 123, 142.
Okay.
In arrears, the payments would be 127, 116. So the difference is interest. How much interest we would pay.
It's like a down payment on a house, right? Is that the parallel banking was?
So we spend $123,000 this year to save $20,000 over 5 years.
And that's totally up to
Up to us.
the decision maker.
in the budget committee, I guess.
And there's a difference, what I can see, the interest rate would be 3.08 versus 3.13.
Right.
A big difference.
So it's a tenth of a point, or less than a tenth of a point. 5/10 of a point.
Is this how you bought the equipment in the past, by making a down payment?
The last two trucks, yes.
Because we've just added $30,000 to our warrant articles. You mentioned wanting to consider the extent of the budget.
Yes, that's the, always in the room.
I guess I'd leave this one open to discussion to see what the total is, so we can see where we're at from a.
And it's gotta go through the budget process and then at town meeting, so.
Well, I don't think they're gonna make the decision to modify this warrant article at town meeting. We need to make that decision
Right.
as to what we present, and then defend it. If, I
Well,
mean,
yes,
I
well,
suppose they could.
if this subject matter is discussed at the public budget meeting, the hearing,
Right.
it does allow the town meeting to change it. And I have a copy of that law with me.
Yeah, it's just a matter of whether or not it would go to that extent. I mean,
Yes.
I'd rather clear it up now.
Yep.
So we're presenting a budget that comports with.
I agree with you on
what
that.
citizens are expecting. Can I leave it alone for the day?
Sure.
All right, thanks.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Okay, the next page is this one here.
Yeah, number 2.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
Thanks. Did you steal that? All right.
Article 2 needs to be reworded. This is 80:80 to authorize the selectmen to convey real property at public auction. And we've had a lot of discussion, and I know the board said we want to bring it up again this year because, for a number of reasons, the board favors a public auction. Has anything changed?
Well, I think you have to, I mean, to avoid the sort of brouhaha that happened last year, I think you have to at least add the word "and." So if you want to have sealed bids and a public auction, I think that might be an easier sell, but to leave it as "or," I think that's where the conflict came in.
No, it's
I mean, that and the choice of auctioneers, but I mean, that's water over the bridge,
Well,
makes my metaphor.
I think you and the board have consistently talked about bid process and,
Well, I think we can or take a position that we need to look outside. I think it's a strange marriage when you have your town council also being your auctioneer. It has no separation. What happens if the auction goes bad and you need to sue somebody? Who are you gonna hire? Now you gotta go find a new lawyer.
Sure.
So it would be better, I think, from that standpoint, and just for optics, to separate
Sure.
that and put this process out. If we want to do an auction as well as sealed bids, put it on the street and see if there's an auctioneer interested. If there isn't, because we're doing sealed bids in conjunction with the auction, then
Sure.
we got another problem on our hands. Then we just got to do it by sealed bid. I mean, that would be my approach to it.
is there any wording here you'd like to see changed?
Well, if you wanted to just present this article in total the way it was, and then change whatever words within it that we want to change.
Right.
Okay, so to see if the town will vote pursuant to RSA 8080 to authorize the selectmen to convey real property acquired by the town by tax collector's deed by public auction, and delete the paren, and advertise sealed bid.
Yeah. You have a problem with that, Bill?
No.
I don't have a problem with it either, but I'm sure the last part of the sentence, or in such manner as determined by the selectmen as justice may require,
That needs to be in there.
Yeah, it has to be in there, and hopefully it doesn't cause, you know, an issue.
Yeah, that's
And-
statutory language.
And do we want to address the indefinitely until rescinded, or do we want to just do it, I mean, we want to do this annually? Is that another issue that's on the table?
I can go either way.
I mean, I don't mind doing it annually, it just becomes a standard warrant article that we
Sure.
have to ask the people.
Every
And they
time.
can address how we did it the
No.
last time. So do you want to?
I have no problem striking that.
Or just the authority will extend?
By a vote of town meeting. If someone stands up and amends it, I move,
Or
we change
extend
the word to
annually.
indefinite. The law allows this authority by a vote of town meeting. Or do we even need that sentence?
Yeah, if we don't have the sentence, then it goes without saying it's only good for 1 year.
Right.
Delete the sentence?
Yeah, that's fine. Do we need to vote on these as we go? Or are we just gonna vote as a total?
Why don't you make a motion on this one?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we reword article, or warrant article 2 from last year to read, to see if the town will vote pursuant with RSA 80:80 to authorize the selectmen to convey real property acquired by the town by tax collector's deed by public auction and sealed bid, or in such a manner as determined by the selectmen as justice may require. This article is recommended by the selectmen. Do I have a second?
I'll
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0.
So we've eliminated Article 7, right?
Right.
Okay.
Is that the,
75 grand
Yeah.
for the police department.
okay, thank you.
Article 8.
Yep.
Yep, we did that.
Okay, that passed 3-0.
Right.
Number 10.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 to support White Horse Addiction Center.
And there's a support document from
Right.
Susan Thistle. And this is the first time that they've come to us, and it's been our tradition, I guess, of this board, to a first-time request or
Should go to the town.
that should go to town meeting, and we would ask a representative to be there to answer any questions.
Sure. All right, I'll make a motion that current Article 10, which could change, the number could change, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 to support White Horse Addiction Center.
I second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Number 11. This is an article required by law. I'll move we accept Article 11 as written.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay.
Number 16, we add an article for Sodom Road Bridge repair. Have you folks got the latest correspondence that came in December 27th? And I'll read it into the record. For your information, Chris Fournier from HEB came in on the 18th to drop off a Christmas present. We talked about the Sodom Road Bridge a little more. I mentioned that I thought that the selectmen left it with him to find out if it was possible to do the replacement work on the bridge now rather than the repair, and be reimbursed later in FY 2025. He clarified that this is not something that he is looking into, as it would involve overturning an actual RSA. He wanted to clarify that the repairs are expected to last 10 years, but could last 20 years. If that was the case, the replacement could potentially be pushed off and not have to be done in FY 2025. I'll let you folks go on, but I have 2 comments.
What was the total, I'm sorry? 30, or how much money was he talking about?
It says here 62,500 to 114,500.
It's a pretty darn big range,
Yeah,
and
that's okay.
it's,
Double or nothing.
yeah. At the very least, I think that range needs to be narrowed before we take it to town meeting, to something that's,
Well, I mean, do we want to pick a number that we enjoy and put it on a warrant article? And then if something happens, at least we've got something to work from? I mean,
But with a bridge, you can't fix half of it.
right.
I have a couple of thoughts, and I'll start off. First of all, I verified at my TAC meeting Wednesday that the legislature put the state highway department in handcuffs, the way it was explained to me. It has to be done the legislature's way, or you can't do it.
Right.
Remember, you asked, hey, what if we go do it, and you pay us off 1/5 each year, or
Right.
10 years out, or whatever? And other towns have tried that, and the legislature,
Yeah.
I won't use the verbiage that I was told. The other thing is, I'm thinking of just the brief time that the road was blocked off, with the trees and whatnot for a couple of days.
Right.
That is the busiest road in town. It's a major highway.
Really?
It also is, I've heard from truckers, and we have fire department vehicles that are too heavy to go over the bridge. So on one hand, I want to get it serviceable and repaired, but on the other hand, I look at the Sodom Road, the County Road Bridge and the culvert that was put in on High Street, and I don't think that the state really treated us well. On one of them, it was a $35,000 add-on that we didn't have money for, and we were stuck for it because it was a cost-plus basis. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm also agree with you, Bill. Unless there's a figure plus or minus 10%, I don't think we're doing the public, the taxpayers, any justice.
Well, we know
Yes.
we're gonna have to do the work.
right.
So do we take this opportunity to start putting money aside? I mean, we could
Okay, yeah.
wait until 2025 or whenever it gets up on the bridge program and pay it all in 1 year. Or we could start to accumulate some money and word the warrant article broadly enough so that if some tragedy happens, we can actually access the money.
Well, in a sense, a tragedy has happened already. The bridge has been derated, okay, so that some of the traffic that normally travels over Sodom Road can no longer legally go that way. And the problem with saying let's put some money aside is it doesn't address in 2018 the current issue, which is how do we restore the load carrying capacity to the bridge. Now, it would, in my view, it would be great to have a more reasonable is not the right word, but a clearer picture of what the cost to repair it is. Absent that, we could say, we could hit the middle of this range and put an article in for $88,500. But is there a way this month that we can get a better idea of what the repair cost would be?
What created I guess we need to meet with Bergeron and see what created that range. was so broad. I mean, I don't have a problem with your notion of putting $88,000 in the pot, but maybe we need a little more information to see how the 114 came out, I
Yeah.
guess.
Karen can illuminate it, I think.
Yeah, but the timing of year, like he was saying, if you did it quickly and had to do it in the winter and frozen things and everything.
Oh.
And then HEB offered to do, if I remember correctly, a price for you, but it wasn't part of what you paid for. The proposal that they did didn't include,
I thought Ed Bergeron didn't work there anymore.
Fournier, Chris Fournier. So the proposal that you folks paid for was just for the repair design,
Mhm.
but you can pay more and get,
Get
Yeah.
me.
firm number.
And get an estimate.
yeah, that's how I remembered it.
Well, I mean, I don't think we're gonna, if the bridge fails, we'll just close the road to that point. I mean, I don't think we wanna get involved with the winter bridge building.
No.
I mean, it's inconvenient, but
Yes.
All right.
to spend another $60,000.
And if there's extenuating circumstances, that board at that time can petition for a special town meeting. That's their option down the road.
So,
Make something up.
yeah. So maybe what we want to do is buy, do you remember, Karen, what, I recall the correspondence, but I don't recall the number, to give us a formal estimate
I don't
of the
remember
repair
either.
cost.
I can, if I can get it, no, if you want me to get it now, I can.
Well, can we jump over this or table it or whatever?
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
get
'cause
it
I don't
ready
think
for
we
another
wanna.
time.
Was your thinking that would warrant for the estimate? Because I think we really need to put some money
Mhm.
aside.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, so if having a formal cost estimate gives us a more targeted number, then we,
And if we could get it done within 2 weeks or
yeah,
whatever.
then we put that in based on their estimate of the cost of doing the repair. And, yeah, my view is that doing it at a time of year that is cost efficient would be the correct approach. We're not, we don't have to do it in the middle of the winter and in sub-zero temperatures because of some situation. We have reduced capacity on the bridge now, which interferes with traffic. But if it's something we can address within the year, then it's a better situation than just kicking it down the road. Or,
Yeah, my only concern is I wanted to give the budget committee the whole budget at some juncture.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that they can
Yeah.
take a look at what
yeah,
we're doing and what they're
Well,
ultimately gonna do.
Could I make a motion that we table this discussion and if possible, take it up with at our meeting on the 8th when we do 3
sure.
formal warrant articles?
Yep.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0 to table. Article 17.
Yeah, I actually had brought this
Yes.
issue up. We were lucky enough to reduce our overall cost for healthcare insurance
Sure.
by $76,000 this year. That may or may not happen in the future. And we have the ability through RSA 31:19A, paragraph 5, to take money from our undesignated fund balance and create a trust, which would be, we decide who's going to manage the trust, but it'll probably be the trustees of the trust funds. And the reading of it is, a trust fund created under the provisions of this section that is established for the purpose of maintaining health insurance funds for the benefit of employees and retired employees of any 34.4. And when so established, the town may name its own trustees may extend any funds in the trust for the payment of health claims, health insurance premiums for the benefit of any employees or retired employees of the town. And we can limit what it's spent for. This is just the statute. So if we say it can only be spent for health insurance premiums, then that's what it will be spent for if we ever use it. An annual accounting and report of the activities of the trust should be presented to the selectmen and published in the annual report. And my thinking when I started this process was that if, with the volatility of the healthcare market, regardless of how we may change the plan going forward and how much participation, non-participation there might be, we still may be looking at significant increases. I mean, I can remember back when I was a selectman before, we had a 15% increase one year and then an 18% increase the year following. So although our health insurance costs are not astronomical, I mean, a $50,000 or $100,000 hit is a significant bump. And we have the ability to moderate that. So if we were hit with that, I mean, you could come up with any number of scenarios. If all of a sudden there was only one carrier in the state for 1 year and their premiums went up and then the next year there was more competition or whatever, and premiums moderated, at least you don't have these spikes happening because you've got something to control them. So I was thinking, and I'd like to propose that for Article 17, the town establish under section 31:19A, paragraph 5, a trust fund for the payment of premiums of the health insurance for town employees of $100,000. That $100,000 coming from the undesignated fund balance of the town. And the trustees would be the trustees of the trust fund. Trust funds.
Right. And the selectmen are the agents to expend.
Right.
For purposes of discussion, I second. Any discussion? No?
So the benefit to having this trust fund is that we can then apply those monies as the need comes up, rather than having to build it into the following year's budget. So if there's a significant change during the budget year, we're not squeezed.
Right. And I've been the first to say that I'm not really in favor of money sitting aside there so that you don't have to pay attention and do your job. You can just kind of dip into that and pay the bill. I'd mentioned that with the road agent, I think, at one point.
Yes.
So there's always that problem, if you will, hanging out there in the air. But I would hope that we'd have a board of selectmen who was as reasonable as the current board and would only use that in the event of an uncontrolled or major spike that would really affect that.
I have a couple of thoughts. First of all, you guys have always been creative and thinking of the future and how can we smooth things out and whatever, and that's nice to hear. The other thing is, are the trustees willing to take on a little more responsibility? Just out of courtesy, I want to ask them that question. The third thing is, the past and current economic picture makes sense for us to put money aside. Our bank accounts can only gain interest in passbook or checkbook savings. The library trustees and the trustees of the trust funds can invest that money, and they're getting 4% and 5% and 6% back, and that's helping the taxpayers. Now, if it's only $90,000 with all their holdings in 1 year, that helps us out on all of our capital projects, including healthcare. I was kind of hoping for $50,000 to get this started.
Make a motion. I mean, if you want to modify it, we can talk about it.
I
I
will,
chose to figure 100 because it's closer to what the increase was this year,
Yeah.
which was 76,000. If it's 50, we're just gonna revisit it again next year or
Yes.
the year after.
I will ask that we amend the amount to $50,000, and that needs a second to go forward.
I'll second that.
Any real discussion on your? What do
Got
you
any
have?
real this, anybody?
No, no.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, I think that the 100,000, given the magnitude of where things go, is not unreasonable. You know,
Well, and it's the first trip through, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't mind the amendment, I'll vote for it. But I think we will end up revisiting this because I don't see health insurance costs going down in the next 4 years, or 8 years, or whatever it is.
Well, I'll call for a vote on the amendment if there's no more discussion. What is the vote on, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? What was your vote?
I,
The amendment passed 3-0. Now, on your motion to take that
And
out
that's
of
been
the...
seconded.
It's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you for your input, John.
As I go and given an opportunity to speak.
Number 18 is statutory, correct?
yeah,
Right, but we don't know what the amount
Yeah.
is.
right, we're not to that point yet.
Any other warrant articles we need to talk about?
Did we
There are
vote?
4 that we're doing on the 8th.
Okay.
We're working on Monday. Yeah.
So, no.
Library building, to see if the town,
Are we doing a warrant, library warrant article is on Monday?
Yep.
Okay.
And the highway.
highway,
Yep.
and also town garage upgrades.
Mhm.
Okay. Do you want these back?
Could I,
Sure. Wish you need them, you can have them if you want.
while Gordon is here, could I speak on the warrant article for the library?
Sure.
Obviously, that's been a topic. Members of the public have had a number of conversations with me about their support for the pending library warrant article. I've listened to a number of methods of paying for the project. I therefore ask that we receive the following types of payment plans: 15-year bond, 15-year construction loan, and the amount needed to be raised by taxes, and the effect on the tax rate. Is there any way you can get that information?
You're asking me to go out and price bonds and going out and...
No,
Do you have any information that would support the payment, or do we need to do
I
that?
need to call.
Jack Whitmer is coming in Monday.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
Jack can call
Okay.
bond council, get the bond prices.
I'd be glad to send that to him if you'd like questions.
Here you go.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else on warrant articles? Okay. Diane wants us to sign the benefit services agreement. Can we have her come in and speak to it? Sure. You folks read this? She was studying it this morning.
This is the management of health sickness.
Yeah.
She'll be right in.
Okay. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
They're reviewing the paperwork you
Yeah,
sent.
if I could just have it so I have something to look at. There's a lot of stuff in here. There's 3 documents here. It pretty much pertains to the FSA portion of the health insurance piece where the employee puts in their money for medical expenses not paid for the health insurance. And so, because Health Trust is managing the FSA for the town, they've outlined the type of, how the service is going to be managed and what our obligations are and what their obligations are to manage the FSA. And these are pretty much boilerplate documents that are renewed every year.
So they've been doing management.
Interlocal trusts are, last year was our health insurance carrier.
Right, but didn't FSA?
But there was the same type of plan, the same type of documents.
I didn't see a Schedule A2, which itemizes the cost. It referred to as Schedule A2. What do we pay for this?
Well, for the FSA, we're not paying anything.
Okay.
They waived the fee.
All right, so maybe that's why there's no payment schedule.
That's my,
That's
yeah,
good
that's
news.
my answer,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, so it goes through all the definitions of the terms in the document, benefit advantage service agreement. This is the agreement, of the managing of the FSA by Health Trust, and we outlined in here, what their obligations are, our obligations, which would be, to notify them if we have an employee who's terminated and left, or we have new enrollments, and that when they pay out, we're going to reimburse them, what they paid out at a prompt time. And also that we are responsible for collecting the monies from the employees' paychecks.
So
this
we
is-
actually hold the money
Yeah, when we do
and then we
payroll,
pay them?
correct.
Okay.
We reimburse the employee, they give us a bill of what that is, and we take it out of the withdrawals from the employee's pay. Yeah. And that's done monthly, I believe. And then then there's the HIPAA piece to it, and this is basically our obligations and their obligations on safeguarding the employees' medical private information, that we, they outline, that we use appropriate safeguards that comply and are applicable to this document and the HIPAA regulations. And then the section 125, this is the agreement. It pretty much outlines the plan. For example, we have a minimum $100 that the employee, if they want to participate, need to contribute, and then we have a max of $22.50. And we can, limit that, we can increase it to 200, we can reduce it to 1,000, up to 1,000, but the IRS allows 2250. We opt for the maximum amount. And then also for dependent care, child care, is also part of this, but we don't really have any employees who participate in that. It's basically a plan design of, whether we have, what the limits are, as I had just, mentioned. Let's see.
And your recommendation is that we sign this, correct?
Yeah, otherwise, then we're not gonna be able to offer that FSA benefit.
I will move approval.
A second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
And I think they're all single signature documents.
Okay.
Yes, for the chair.
Thank you.
Does the board have anything else before we adjourn?
I don't.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Do you want to have public comment, or,
It's up to you.
I don't know if we have public here, there's one.
I would just like to, based on your conversation with Carla earlier, do the Board of Selectmen intend to get more clear delineation definition of what has been published, the legality of what has been published on our website? Is this legal for us to have access to? As far as budget committee members, as far as members of the community? Are you going to do anything on it? Or are we going to just rely on the past opinion of Attorney Buck?
I think we certainly should explore the issue, with our, legal help, and do whatever we can to get some clarity here.
I certainly appreciate it.
My point was that I don't think there's anything we can do about what's on the internet, but I certainly think we should have
Well,
clarity.
I would debate that if it was indeed an illegal, if that document was published on an illegal basis, based on the RSAs, then yes, I think there is something that you could do about it. But that's an opinion, and I'm not going to pursue that at this point. I would just like to know if the selectmen are going to get a clear delineation of what is going on in this. It puts a lot of people in a bind,
Yeah,
including, members of the budget committee.
sure.
Mr. Chairman,
Hi there.
I would ask that if public input is going to be sought at the end of a work session, it should be listed on the agenda. Otherwise, we should stick to the agenda.
I apologize.
Accepted.
I modified the agenda without asking my fellow selectmen if it was appropriate. But I'm
That being said, since public input wasn't on the agenda, I wish I hadn't said anything, but I see no need for it.
Just to clarify, I did not ask Carla to apologize.
Yes, you did.
When?
It's in your email.
I think you did, Max.
You did?
I read the email and I thought there was an ask for an apology.
It's a highly qualified, if I remember correctly.
I'm doing a word search for apologize. It's not in the email. I asked you to correct the record.
You asked me to apologize.
I asked you to state that you are wrong.
Folks,
Mr. Chairman, take control of this. Please.
Anything else? Okay.
We're good.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, folks.
Try not to get blown away, that wind is picking up hard.
Yeah.